before it starts going live. There we are. Hey, live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. It's season 3, episode 13. Today, Justin Sloan, the author of the Biotech Wars, co-creator of the Seppucarion Universe, co-author of the Warwolves trilogy with Jonathan Yanez and Marine Corps veteran, joins the show. He's collaborated with 5 of the big-name science fiction authors of the day, including Michael Ronn, P.T. Hilton, Michael Anderle, and a couple more that we'll talk about in the show. He's written science fiction novels. He's written screenplays. He's written video games, including for Game of Thrones game, which is pretty neat. I'd like to talk about that, as you can see. And he's been doing all that since about 2014. And today we're going to talk about his writing journey. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We've been trying to get you on the show for a couple weeks, and because I'm a horrible show host, I double booked and messed up things, and we had to change schedules and all that. But now we finally got you on, and I think it's
double shows to get caught up. It's kind of
it's ridiculous.
We're going to do triple shows now,
only because I can't read a calendar.
We're going to do all-day shows, all-day Keystroke Medium, just to get caught up.
You know, if we could do,
we're boys. We don't do
marathon
calendars, do we?
we could do a whole TV network, a Keystroke Medium TV network, where all we do is just broadcast live.
It'd be like CNN.
It wouldn't be like CNN. It'd be like Fox News,
like Fox
headline news.
Yeah, it'd just be its own thing. It'd be like no news. Nothing factual, or useful in any way on our network.
Yeah, and half the time we wouldn't even be saying anything. We'd just be typing because that's
making dumb jokes.
Yeah,
right. I'm down with it. Let's do it.
Everybody that's joining us in the live show, thank you very much for hanging out with us. Oh, I got to open the chat. Justin, for those of our viewers who haven't ever heard of you, or would like to introduce yourself and tell us how you got started in writing?
Sure. So yeah, some people who are familiar with my show might already know the story. I do the Creative Writing Career Podcast, which, like I was saying, you guys have been doing a lot better than I have, because I've just been kind of doing it when I feel like it lately. We started off with, like, you know, episode every week with a whole bunch in the back burner, and then just kind of became what it is now, which is just whenever I feel like it, I do it. But I started that also in 2014, like you mentioned. Started the writing for real in 2014. I was doing the screenwriting in games before that a little bit. But what happened was I was reading the Game of Thrones books, I think it was, and it was between books 3 and 4, maybe. And when I was waiting for book 4 even, and I was like, wow, I love these books so much. What other great books are out there? And I was looking for them, trying to find, you know, asking all my buddies what's out there. And I read a lot and I loved them also, but it just was like still not hitting that same emotional spot that the Game of Thrones books were. And so then I one day sat down and said, I'm going to try to write something. I'll try to write it. By the time I'm 50, maybe I'll be done. And then like 3 months later, I had 120,000 words, and a few books later, I'm still not 50, so that's kind of nice.
Schedule.
Yeah, and then got into video games and screenwriting and all that stuff, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Very nice. So you've done a little bit of a lot of collaborating, more so than I think any of the other guests we've had on. Did you start out with the ambition to do that? Is that why you kind of chased after that a little bit more than say the average author, or what kind of pushed you into the collaboration of doing so many?
Probably games. And so how it kind of went down is I started writing my fantasy novel, which became Falls of Redemption, or Land of Gods was the first one in that series. So the Falls of Redemption series, and that was a lot of fun, but it took me like 6 years, you know, of like writing and revision and all that stuff. And then during that time, I was working at the Federal Reserve Bank as an Asia analyst, and that was kind of cool. For a while, I thought that was my goal. I was like, I want to get to the Federal Reserve and be an Asia analyst. That's awesome. I was the Taiwan, India guy, and thought that was pretty cool until I started doing it and was bored off my butt, right? I was just like, what am I doing here? and so I made a goal. I said, okay, I'm going to be full-time by, I think it was May 2014, was it? Maybe. I'm kind of forgetting my dates right now, but yeah, around that time, I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I started going hardcore and focusing on that. And anyway, so I was at video games, and I'm loving the process there, right? Because we're sitting around whiteboarding all day long, just coming up with ideas, putting them on the whiteboard or whatever, Post-it notes on the windows or whatever, and just having a lot of fun. And so when I was there, one of my buddies got fired like 6 months after we got hired at the same time. And I was like, oh crap, that could happen to me at any minute. And then what would I be? Just a guy who worked in video games for 6 months. So I kind of lit a fire under my own butt and said, okay, it's time to just start putting books out there, because I want to start being an author, not just a guy who's trying to be an author or trying to get into some industry. And so I published, actually what I published first was a nonfiction book, which was Creative Writing Career. I think that was the first one. And that was basically, when I was interviewing people to try to get into games, doing all these informational interviews, talking to them, how do I get into games? How do I get into Pixar? How do I get into other places, non-game related as well, like Pixar. And I was coming up with all this great feedback. And I was like, well, why am I just doing this for myself? Why don't I share it with other people? And that became Creative Writing Career of the book. And then that led into the podcast. And anyway, to answer your story, it was all about that fun creative process of collaboration in games that got me into the creative process of books.
I really like doing that. Scott and I have done that a few times for some short story projects that we worked on. And then a couple of months ago, we whiteboarded or plotted out one of his Dark Landing books, which was really fun.
That was a blast.
And I kind of like, it was actually a lot more funner than just myself sitting down and coming up with an idea for a book. And so like Raph is having a good collaboration series coming up this year that he's working on. And so hopefully I'll be able to do some plotting with him, and maybe we can do some cross the pond whiteboarding, because I've got a huge whiteboard that I don't use enough. I need to use it way more than I do.
Yeah. Is it big enough to stretch across the Atlantic?
Yes, absolutely. It is.
Easily.
Yeah. I found that some books require to do on your own. Like just you have an idea and it's all coming through in your head, and you just got to get it down, right? That's the solo book. And then other ideas are like, this would be so cool, but I know it could be way cooler if somebody else's input is involved.
Right.
And there's this weird phobia of collaboration, or some people just dissing it for the reason of dissing it lately. And it's just humorous. It's because you don't get it, and you can't comprehend how it works, or you just can't make it work, or you're too much of an ego to let it work. And so you're going to bash it, but it could be so much fun. It can lead to, it's not just all about the business, it's that artistic side of you that needs to get out there and be part of this creative process with somebody else and see where that can expand. Like my collaboration with PT Hilton under the pen name Jesse Nethermind. We just shared that one. And that was a lot of fun because it went in totally different directions that I never would have been able to take it on my own.
Yeah. Well, you have to be able to kind of let go of the process, and sharing creatively is an interesting thing, because as writers, you put so much into your vision of a story and you live it. And then somebody goes, well, I want to change that completely, And so you have to be okay. You got to be able to give it. And it's a good, even if you don't want to do it a lot, I'd recommend it just because as an exercise, as a creative exercise, what it's like to give and take, and, because you learn from that, you grow. Really.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, Scott and I on our short stories, that was the first collaboration we'd ever done as a narrative, as part of a narrative structure, creating one. And actually writing the stories, Scott wrote his own story, and then I wrote my own, but we planned them together. So if you read them separate, you could get two really good stories. But if you read them back to back or flip-flopped or whatever, you would get the full story. You would get both sides.
I think you could read them. I think you could read them concurrently.
You probably could.
And it still makes it. And they kind of would go like that until they got to the end, and you'd be like, wow, that's mind blown.
Yeah. That's what we did too. Actually, we actually did 2 POV characters, and we each took one. And for those books, we did it where book 1 was 1 POV character, and book 2 was the second POV character. But at the end of book 2, the other one comes into play, and then book 3 is on and off. So then we switched chapters, because by then we'd figured out each other's writing style and who the characters were, and we're able to do it a little bit better. But that's a fun way to collaborate, because then you're not relying on the other person's words sounding exactly like yours, and they don't need to, because it's another POV, point of view. And therefore, the narrative should kind of sound a little bit different if you're going with like free and direct style, where the narrative is the actual character's kind of thoughts, in a sense.
Right. So that's interesting.
You want to have the benefits of, one of the benefits of collaboration is potentially to get 2 different voices, if you want to take that word, into one story arc or whatever length it takes. What's the actual mechanics of you collaborating? I mean, we have had 1 or 2 of the collaborators on before who spoken about sort of like, shared Google Docs and emailing stuff back and forth. How do you do it?
Yeah, we do it pretty simply. I'm a big fan of just writing in Word. And so basically what we do is we put an outline together in Google Docs, where we just bat that fact back and forth, because it's collaborative right on there. You can see each other writing even if you want to. And from there, then we just go off and do our own sections. And then we post them into the Google Docs above the outline as we're going, so we can read each other's stuff and know what's going on. I think a key that people need to realize if you're doing it that way, me and my buddy had an argument over this a couple days ago, is to make sure that you know the timing, because you don't want, like, if I have chapters 1, 2, and 3, and that lasts a week, and he has chapters, or sorry, I meant 1, 3, and 5, and he has chapters 2, 4, and 6, and his chapters last an hour. That's going to feel really weird for the reader, right? Because you're like, wait, this doesn't add up. So just making sure that when you do those outlines, you're like, this will probably take about 45 minutes, and maybe 2 to 6 hours could pass between this and the next chapter. And keeping track of that for each other, I think, is a key part of that. But yeah, basically just Google Docs and then going back into Word and doing our thing.
And so, how do you kind of hold each other to account? I mean, I hate to use such a business kind of term, but re-articulating the question, do you only work with people you trust that can keep to your timings or your pace of writing, or do you have some kind of mechanism where you kind of you know, hold each other to account? You know, say, come on, Justin, speed up, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know, what's that?
A little bit of that thing that you mentioned about working with people you trust, but that's also one reason I like to have multiple projects going on at a time, because if I'm working on my solo book and also on this joint project, it's okay if I get, you know, 2 or 3 chapters done and the other guy's gotten 0 work done, because I don't care. I'm working on my solo book too. So I'll just focus on my solo book until he catches up. And then I'll jump back on there. Okay, sweet. Maybe I need a break from my solo book anyway, especially if they're different genres, which, you know, people say to avoid switching genres a little bit. But I'm doing some pen name things. So right now with a collaborative writer, collaboration, whatever, I can write with that guy on the pen name thing when I need a break from my, you know, science fantasy or space opera, which, you know, that's takes a lot of brain power. And this other thing we're writing is just kind of telling itself, because it's more about the characters just in a situation, which they all are, but, you know, it's just like, it just rolls off of my fingertips, versus the space opera. You're like, wait, I got to make sure I take account of that. I got to research this thing. And so it's very different parts of my brain that I think it all kind of just works together. If you are in a situation where you're writing with a partner and they're frustrating you and they're not taking your time and all that, I would advise looking at another project on the side, and not writing with that person again, probably.
So I have 2 questions, actually. My first one goes to where we're talking about voice of the character and POV. And you're talking about writing in this particular case, you're talking about writing 2 different POVs, both authors handling one of the each. And so your narrative language per se is going to be different or slightly altered than the other one. So did you ever have an instance where the voice was so different that it didn't flow with the other? Like, some of the collaborations that I've seen, you can definitely see that one author wrote the whole thing, right? Like, and then a couple of them you can see, oh, okay, the voice has changed there, so I know that somebody else was writing there. How did you guys handle that in your process?
Yeah. Usually that comes down to editing. Hopefully, if you can find a good editor who's able to help you with that. With one of my buddies, he likes to write these excuse me, what do you call it? Like very staccato, is that the word? Sentences, or it's like kind of just like short and crisp and
punchy.
Yeah. And then he also does like the I'm forgetting the word right now, but, you know, like where it doesn't even start with the like screenplay style. And screenplays a lot of times he ran across the store, picked up a bottle of milk, threw it at the guy, and those are all different sentences. And that's not how I write. Yeah. So that stuff, what we did, we just asked the editor to pay attention to that and say, if it's working, fine. But if it feels like it'll flow better the other way, if you feel like a narrator when they're doing the audiobook is going to do a better job, if it's a little bit different, feel free to give us a revised suggested revision. You know what I mean? So I think that way works. In some of my collaborations, we do it that way, where like one person has written the whole book. Like my stuff with Michael Anderle, where it's mostly just me writing it. Or now with PT and I, we mostly write it, and then Anderle is like the overseer kind of. And then I have done some projects where we just kind of go back and forth and just write randomly. You know what I mean? That's hard. And I think what happened in that book is what we had to do is, at the end of the day, we had to pick one person as like the captain, you know, the captain of the ship. And so in that case, I think it was me. And I went through and I had to just kind of go through and do my pass of like a rewriting pass almost, where if like a thing is just not flowing in my head, it doesn't sound right, I just take it. And you have to agree up front that, you know, somebody's going to be okay with that. Like your name's going to be on the book. It might not sound exactly like you, but we do a lot of author notes. Some of the author notes will say, hey, this was mostly Justin's baby, but, you know, I did my thing. I wrote on it. I hope you love it, but it's mostly his. And that way if everybody hates it, they can blame me. That's okay.
Well, and you really want to manage reader expectations, because if Justin Sloan's fans are the main draw, then you want to write kind of that group, so it'd make more sense for you to have kind of final authority and vice versa and so forth.
Right.
But that's
like
important.
nobody thinks that Michael Anderle is writing all of those books that have his co-authors on there. Like his fans know exactly what they are. And I think that's really smart, because if they didn't, like if he was hiring a bunch of ghostwriters to do it all
and didn't put anybody else's name on the books and was just like, no,
they're gonna be like, why do these read like pieces of crap? Not that my book is a piece of crap, but to some of those readers, they want his voice and his style. So if they pick up my book and read my voice and my style, they're gonna think this is horrible. This doesn't fit at all. But at least now they know what it is, so they can go, oh, maybe I give it a chance because maybe there's something different about Justin that I can get involved with and like.
Right.
Hopefully they all love it.
So my second question that
and they'll get Justin Sloan tattoos because it's so awesome. It's like, man, I'm getting a tattoo of this guy. He's an awesome writer.
Yeah, I hope so.
You've got a lot of tattoos already.
I got tattoos
from all these.
All the different favorite authors you have. Just
by the time,
like a concert tour on your back.
Yeah.
and like
Ralph Kearns in a special place.
By the time we're done with this show, Scott is going to have so many awkward tattoos on everywhere.
It happens,
So my second question is, with all these collaborations, and you're talking about switching between projects, how many projects do you have going at one time, and how do you find the time to manage all of those things? Because when you look on your Amazon page, you've got, I mean, upwards of 30 projects that are on your author page that are just your personal projects, which I like to talk about Biotech Wars here in a second. But all of these books, I mean, how many books do you have out now? Like 40 or 50 or something? Where do you find the time to do all these projects?
Yeah, I don't know how many I have. What do you call it? Book tracker, book report, whatever. It says I have 76, but they lie. So I think it's it's like probably more like 50 or 60. Because I think some of those are like previous things that I might have published when I was figuring things out, like short stories or like little episodes. At first they did Falls of Redemption as episodes, and I took that down and changed it. So I think they count those. They're probably like 50 or 60 books. But scheduling it and finding the time and all that, it's especially tough now because we have a baby, 6 weeks old, and then my third kid, yay, which is exciting and awesome. But it means, writing time suffers. But what I've been doing before that, I basically wake up at like 3 or 4 and I write until the kids wake up to go to school, which is like 7-ish, and then take them to school, come back, get some more writing in until I get tired, take a lunch break, work out. Then I get back in for another couple hours in the afternoon. And then that's it. The evening is like me picking up the kids and playing with them and putting them to bed. And then I'm like, so I pass out.
Right.
But as far as like the scheduling of it all, what's great. So one thing that we did with Jonathan Yanez, which was kind of different. He might have talked about it when he was on the show. I think he did. Yeah. But the thing that made it easier for me was that we had him we did the outline. I looked it over. I had some comments. He wrote most of the first draft, or pretty much all the first draft. And then we had the 2 other guys that I created that world with, they were the first passes on editing on that. So instead of me taking time right away, they would go through and do like their comments and their feedback and all that, seeing how it fits into the world. George, one of my co-writers on that, he was a screenplay guy. He sold a big 6 or something figure deal on screenplays to like Michael Bay or something, so he knows like all those big set pieces and how explosions work.
Right.
Get the attention on the dramatic side. And then Kyle went with me to the Johns Hopkins master's program. So he has more of like a literary take on things. And so they were able to come at it from 2 different angles and give him feedback. And then he went back and rewrote it and then gave it back to me. And at that point, it's pretty clean. I'm just mostly trying to get it better as much in any way I can, which still took a little bit. On all these processes, it takes a little bit because I want to get it somewhat in my style and my voice too, because my name's on there. Like I don't want it to just come out and feel totally like, where is this? This has nothing to do with Justin Sloan. But not much, Jonathan's amazing. He's like super fast at it all. He just kicks butt. He's like, oh, you want to do that? All right, here's a take. Boom. He gives it to you.
Incredible work ethic.
Yeah. So if you can get people like Jonathan on your side, then you don't have a problem.
Well, that sounds like an incredible writing team, though. The way you just described with the 4 of you.
That's great.
It
means I didn't take as much profits for myself, which kind of sucks. But my thought on this is the artistic side of it. Like I'm trying to please the fans, and we're trying to get the best book out there that we can. And looking at those numbers, because those books sold pretty well after the fact, my wife's like, why did you do that? But for me, it was like more just like, I want to make this cool world and make it like the best possible process we can. And I think it worked out pretty well. We have 2 other authors lined up for that, and they're both looking pretty awesome. We have the covers coming in now, and the first book is done. We're waiting for the second book to be done before we launch anything on both of those projects.
And that's the Seppucarion Universe, right?
Yeah. What we did is we launched an anthology where we had all 6 of the authors, the 3 of us plus the 3 collaborators, and they each did a short story in there, and then they're spinning that off into these trilogies or series, depending on how they go.
So what's interesting to me about your universe there is, first and foremost, your covers are phenomenal. Like all the covers on all the books in the universe are very cool. They're very unique stylistic wise too. Like yours and Jonathan's has a very a neat kind of female protagonist character that's on the front, and then
I like the axe hammer thing or whatever it is.
Yeah. And then George Mahaffey?
Yeah.
His New World Disorder books, those mechs on the front of the covers are fantastic. And actually, I found that by accident, and I was scrolling through and I saw the Seppucarion thing, and I was like, wait a minute, didn't Justin wrote something in that, and so did Jonathan, and so I picked it up and looked through the preview on Amazon, and normally I don't do that. Normally I just buy books that are authors that I know, but I picked it up, I read it, and I was like, that is kick-ass. I'm buying that book. So that's on my list right now. I'm reading it.
It worked, huh? The logo worked.
Yeah, so the logo, absolutely, the logo and the branding of that project is fantastic. So very cool on that.
And George kicked butt on that too. Like I say this, and I don't mean to be mean to you, George, but if you're listening, when we did the Syndicate War series, they're good. Like we all did kind of good writing on that. But when he wrote in there, I was like, yeah, this is cool. You're doing a good job. But when he wrote this new book, the one you just talked about in his Mech Command series, I think it is.
Right.
It's just like, wow, you found your voice, dude. This is it.
Absolutely.
And I've heard the same thing from all the readers. So it's pretty exciting.
Well, it's neat because we've talked about first lines on the show a lot. First lines and first pages mean everything. And the first line of this book is, you always remember the first time you die.
Yeah.
And that was cool. And then he goes on and says, I remember it well because I was knee deep in aliens, ambushed by a whole army of them out in the middle of the desert. Like that really pulled me in. And I was like, I really like the voices, kind of like The Martian, where you're like, the voice pulls you into the book more than the actual thing that's going on. I like that a lot.
I like his first person style there, and I'm gonna have him go back and redo the whole Syndicate War series again in first person from just his
yeah. Good news. You got good news and bad news.
Right.
George, do it. Sound like a harsh taskmaster.
Yeah, clear your schedule for this.
I wish. He's too busy on his own projects now.
Well, I'd like to
grow up and they fly from the nest.
So, just on that sort of note, I mean, it sounds. And I might have the relationship a little bit wrong here, so forgive me, George, if I have. Is this sort of like someone you've kind of nurtured and mentored, if you like? Would that be fair to say, or is that too simplistic?
In a sense, so George came to me because, like I mentioned, he'd had the success in the screenwriting side, and I've been doing the screenwriting stuff. But the most I've done is I've optioned 2 things, one a little more serious than the other. And that's it. And nothing's gone anywhere. And it's kind of small potatoes compared to what he's done. So he came to me and he was like, listen, I have success in that realm and I can help you in that realm if you can kind of help me in this realm. Because he'd published, I don't know, like 6 books or 7 books or something before this, but they'd all kind of, their ranking wasn't that great, they're fun books, but they just weren't ranking anywhere. And he's like, so I see that you're doing well and that you've done well with the Michael Anderle stuff. So maybe you could do something like that for me. And then I'll guide you on the screenwriting side. So yeah, we kind of co-mentored each other in a sense, where I was focused on the novel side and he's focused on that other side. And we have some cool screenwriting projects that I won't mention yet, but when they make millions, I'll come back and tell you about it.
Yeah, I told you so. I said it here.
It's always a first here at Keystroke.
That's when we'll have a slot at 9 o'clock on Fox or wherever when we discuss these things.
That's right.
Josh sat in his suits.
I'm gonna buy a whole bunch of blue suits just cause. And I'll wear them.
You make that sound like a threat, Josh.
Oh, I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna wear the hell out of them.
Yeah, wear and no pants though.
Of course.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, really, Who would wear?
Well, I'm not wearing pants now. So.
The Pantsless podcast. That needs to be our next project, I think.
Yeah, you might have to compete with Kevin Tumlinson for that one. Yeah, trademark on it, I think.
Right. He invented hands optional, so we've got some places to go with it. So I want to switch gears just a little minute and talk about your Project Destiny Biotech Wars book, because that series looks really neat. But really quick, I want to talk about our show sponsor this week, which is our Covers for a Cure event coming up this Saturday on March 31st at 1:30 in the afternoon. Christian Kallias is doing the covers for us this time. Tom Edwards did a great job last year on the event. Christian this year has graciously supplied 4 book covers for the event, and they are beautiful. There's 3 full wraparound book covers, if you will, if you're going to do like a paperback and you want that full front and back wrap feel. He's got 3 of those, and then 1 kind of a bonus ebook cover, and then his editor on his Universe in Flames series is going to donate an 80,000 word copy edit package for another auction item. And then all of those, the proceeds from that will be donated to the American Diabetes Association. My mom has diabetes, and Scott's son also is dealing with that on a daily basis. So we thought that would be a neat charity this year to donate to. We have some bidders lined up already, but there are still some spots available if you would like to participate in the event. Right now, there are no reserves on any of the items. That could change, but I don't see it happening. So come hang out with us for an hour and a half ish on Saturday, the 31st. This probably, when this hits audio, it'll probably be over or just happening. So if you're watching live, definitely mark that on your calendars. If you'd like to bid, send an email to keystroke.medium@gmail.com with the subject line bidder registration, and we will get you into that group. So you can
don't forget to tell all your friends, like right now.
Tell your friends.
They can all come. Last year was a blast. It was really a unique experience, and I think everybody came away from it just super pumped. So,
I thought I don't know why my links are not working in the chat. Well, whatever. It's keystroke.medium.com. You can click on Covers for a Cure, see all the covers there, and yeah, like you said, Scott, it was a really fun time last year. It went a lot smoother than I thought it was going to run, and we had a lot of fun time talking with.
We had a lot of big name authors, and we had a lot of brand new authors, and we were just all hanging out together, one big happy bidding family.
I thought that was an amazing experience because for me, it was I think it's going to be remembered as one of the seminal times in indie publishing where. We show just how much firepower the indie writing community as a whole, the cover artists, the authors, the editors have when they band together and for a common cause, because $4,200 is nothing to sniff at. So it'll be great if we matched or even exceeded that on this one.
I agree. I hopefully we will. JR, we'll do a little video on the bidders group just to let you know how it's going to work on Saturday. So we'll fill everybody in there. So okay, back to Justin Sloan here on live. The Biotech War Series, you released that, and it's a singular project. It's just you as an author writing on it. The first one you released back in February, and then the third one you just released a couple of days ago, Project Ascent. Do you want to talk a little bit about this project and what was the inspiration for it and what's it all about, man?
Yeah, sure. Where did it start from? So me and my wife, about a year ago, we were sitting around, my wife and I, and debating about, story stuff. And she's like, why don't I start outlining something with you? That'd be kind of fun. We could do it on date nights, instead of just talking about our lives and getting to know each other. Let's outline a story. And at first I was kind of like, skeptical. But
that sounds like a Protestant holiday. I don't know. When you got time off from working as an author, I've got something I want you to do. Work as an author.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. We came up with some really cool ideas, and she didn't like try to take control or anything. It was just kind of fun, us brainstorming things, and we were kind of thinking, how do we make Game of Thrones, what we love about Game of Thrones, how do we take that into space and make it really cool? And so we spent about a year doing that and just coming up with all these Excel sheets and all these like weird things that you can find online, these different brainstorming tools, and coming up with these big windows and circles and connecting them, all that stuff. And so that was not this project. But what happened was I was looking
that has nothing to do with this.
That was this other thing. No.
I said all that to say this.
So I was looking around on ArtStation, artstation.com, where artists post their work and you find cover artists. And there was this one by Zach Sy that was really cool. It's what I used for book 2, which is a guy teleporting and he has his gun and there's like some marine looking guys coming at him. And I was like, wow, that would be a really cool cover. What would I use that for if I was to take that? And then I thought, oh my God, that's perfect for the prequel stuff. Because in that series that I outlined with my wife, it starts at this point where things, I don't want to spoil it. So I'm just going to say things are happening and I jump into the middle of where things are happening in this world, but you kind of want to know more. It's kind of like, well, like it's Game of Thrones. In Game of Thrones, the Hand of the King has just died, and now Ned Stark is going to be named the new Hand of the King. A lot of people want to go back and see the Battle of the River, and they want to see why the other Hand of the King, what was going on with that, and how the whole situation happened with Rhaegar and with Robb and all this stuff. All these things that we're getting kind of little hints of later on in the books, but we would love to see that show or read that book. Nerds like me. Anyway, and so this is my prequel to that series. Instead of just saying, here it is, and giving you the little snippets throughout the series, which I'm still going to do, of course, because some people might not read the prequels, I decided to just write them. I also thought I'm not quite ready to release that big series yet anyway, because of the Seppucarion stuff. Like, it's still in the works. Like, Jonathan was finishing his books. We have those 2 other co-authors coming out. So I kind of wanted to get that in the pipeline before I come out with my big series that's like outlined as 9 books right now. And so I thought this prequel trilogy would be a great way to start that. And then I sat back and I started thinking more about what it is. And in the other series, there's all this stuff with space stations and mining and, kind of stuff that's popular right now with the Expanse in a sense. Yeah. Quite different, that same kind of setting. And that's all part of that other book, but you never actually see that in that series. So I said, why don't I see what I find out before that on this series? And there's more to it too. There's this whole situation with the bad guys in that series. This is going to be minor spoiler-ish, so if any of my fans are listening, just be wary.
Spoilers. We typically actually
hold on. What's he doing? Giving the warning before?
Yeah, I was going to say typically we spoil first and then warn after.
Oh, I'm sorry, I ruined this show. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
So start the whole thing over. Everybody go away and come back here.
Yeah. And the bad guys in that series, there's some big backstory to them that if you read this series first and then get to those bad guys, when the reveal happens, you're going to be like, which was me saying, I don't know if you guys swear on the show. WTF? What's going on here?
Swear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always forget. You hear it when you're on, but yeah.
No
so there's a lot of that I wanted to explore and set up and have fun with. But then the real basic of what the story is just that a husband and wife, the guy he's leaving the Marines to go up to be one of the first people to go up into space kind of exploration. They're looking for alien life. They haven't found it yet. He's going to be part of this new privatized military, civilian military owned by a corporation. And he's super excited. But the story starts with where the wife has been told that he's dead. She went looking for him, and it's a year later. So the starting point is that year later point. She's been up there now for a bit. She's formed this hacking team, and they're like trying to take down the corporation to get answers because they never told her what happened to her husband. They just said he's dead. That's it. And this has been happening with other people throughout the world who have gone up there to join their civilian military. And so she's looking for answers, and then it's a dual POV. I'm just going to spoil that right off the bat because I didn't mean it as like a mystery. So what happens is there's the POV of her, then there's a POV of one of the super soldiers. They're like these genetically engineered super soldier guys. And of course it's the husband. I'm not trying to hide the fact that that's the husband.
Right.
But there's been at least one review where it's like, oh, it's so predictable. And I'm like, of course it's predictable. It's 2 POVs. There's a guy and a girl. And there's one is a wife looking for her husband. Of course the guy is going to be the husband. Anyway.
Yeah. That's like
so that's the story.
Just like you watch a movie and it's like they do the hero refuses the call. Right. Nobody goes, oh yeah, he's not going to get the quest.
Oh, he's going all right. It's a twist. Oh my gosh, he's going. Didn't see that coming at all.
And no offense if a reader read it and didn't catch that. I don't mean to call you stupid. Just saying it's
I can't. I'm not attached to those books. You should have seen it coming.
Yeah, you should have seen it coming. Yeah, there are readers who don't study story structure and who don't think about these things. They just enjoy the story for what it is, right? So I imagine those readers who read that, and I think I give it away like obvious around chapter 5 or 6. So it's not that far in the book anyway, but maybe 7 or 8, something like that.
It's funny. It's funny you mention that because I've been writing since I was 12, but it's only been like the last 2 or 3 years where I start to predict everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, if I would just give myself up to the story as a consumer of stories, whether I'm watching a movie or reading. But lately now I cannot stop myself from and I'll say it. And my wife's like, oh my God, I wish you would stop doing that. This is definitely going to happen. And then like 2 seconds later it happens.
Because it's an evolution of the serialization format, isn't it?
Yeah.
Water cooler chat. You want to know, you want to get together with your buddies at work who read the same thing. And then sort of hypothesize what comes next, even though you can just go home and read it or watch it or whatever.
Well, because a good twist in the story has to be inevitable. It has to be a surprise, but when you look back on it, it has to go like, well, that makes perfect sense. So the clues are always there, unless it's just some rando thing that happened, and those are the ones you're like, that what? You just don't feel satisfied. And I also read someplace that you want your reader to figure it out just moments before it happens.
Yeah, like a page or a paragraph before it happens. Otherwise, if it's like 3 chapters before, it's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me is, and we could talk about this about your interest, your bigger series too, is that you mentioned Game of Thrones and kind of having that as the baseline inspiration for going this route and doing this thing. Martin is kind of infamous for seeding things into his book and then not telling anybody that he seeded it in and that they mean anything. And there's a whole bunch of websites that pop up that are theorizing on what he has put in his books and what he says here, like the whole R plus L equals J theory that went around for years and everybody was trying to figure it out, and there was no concrete evidence ever until the TV show did it. So do you have it planned as a 9-book series, and we're talking about twists and different things, and is that something that you're looking at doing, is creating that kind of an atmosphere where people are like, is this what he means, is this what's going on?
I hope so. I don't ever claim to be nearly as amazing as Martin. If that day ever happens, I will just sit back and smile and be done.
Then you just come on.
It sounds like that's what Martin's doing, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Probably said the same thing once upon a time about somebody else. We're definitely setting up a lot of these things, and that's why we wanted to outline it to over a year with such detail, because we love all that about that show or those books. Because when you're reading it, that just feels so glorious.
It does. It really does.
But I read that Martin is not a planner.
Right. Well, but he is. Like, if you look back, he's not a planner to the extent that a lot of
plans with his draft
outliners are. Yeah. He has a lot of high level notes, and like you can look back and see like his pitches to the agents early on and stuff. And so he had the main things figured out. He just didn't have all the details along the way.
Right. That makes sense.
In itself, like the Game of Thrones world, Westeros, it's quite simplistic, isn't it? In terms of what's happening in macro, you've got 2 kingdoms going at it, and a threat coming from the north. It's the micro, the little bits, which are where you start to get the twist. I mean, it's inevitable that the dead were going to come over the wall, wasn't it? But sort of the exact mechanics of it is probably what people are really interested in.
Or like when they killed John off, you're like, okay, come on, whatever.
Nobody believes it. Yeah, we did a lot of that stuff, which is quite fun, where we've set up already in the prequel. So if people later on are reading and they're seeing these big things happen, if they've read the prequels, which I'm not going to call them prequels on the series because I feel like that'll, diminish them in some way.
Right.
But in my mind, they're the prequels.
So like the warm up.
What's that?
The opening act.
Yeah.
So you're the Hobbit, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the Hobbit. So if they read the Hobbit of mine,
please read my Hobbit.
Yeah, they're gonna see some really cool things that set up what happens later.
That's very neat. JR was mentioning my collection behind me, and they are not dolls. They are and they're not really action figures. They're representations of my dream. We were talking about Game of Thrones, and I've got all my Game of Thrones, my 4. I've got 2 in the mail today. They're in the mailbox right now. I'm really excited to go get them.
Like monuments.
Oh yes, they're monuments to greatness. And so my whole shelf up here is going to be all Game of Thrones memorabilia.
I had Game of Thrones maps.
See, except for over here where I have my Just Black Rifle coffee and my Voldemort, who's missing his wand, and I don't know where the wand is. So right now he's just like that with no wand.
Well,
so.
that sucks for him, doesn't
it does.
I'm just trying to see what else you got there.
I've got a whole. Oh yeah, Sanderson's all over the place. He's actually more over here, and I've got my Firefly and my Iron Man. I've got stuff. Maybe I'll give like a little tour of my new stuff after the show.
We were talking about this before the show about our backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of stuff before the show. Some of them won't make it on the show because it's just not polite.
Oh, it looks like, and actually, it looks like Justin's computer crashed, and that's a no bueno.
No, I thought he was just like, I thought we were losing his interest. And
yeah.
We suck at shit.
The thought of going through.
Yeah. Like, so now we're talking about my tour, and the internet broke.
Back to the tour.
Sorry about that.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. He's like, bam.
This is my interview, not Josh's studio's interview.
So I'm going to send him the link and see if we can't get him back on here. So
Rick points out that that the wand is a Horcrux.
Wash your mouth out, right?
Yeah. And also,
I did already.
The cool thing that I finally been able to display is my one of a kind energy drink Romulan ale, which is illegal, obviously, in the Federation. So it's not a very well thought out display because I've got Firefly and the Millennium Vulcan right next to each other. So obviously I didn't think out any kind of
I think that it brings
organizational
creative tension to your workspace.
Also, what's really cool is so I went to Kansas City this last weekend with my wife and went into Barnes & Noble, which I don't normally do. We have a Barnes & Noble here, and I don't usually go there, but I got, you mentioned Brandon Sanderson. I got this little neat, it's a novella. It's short for him. It's 40,000 words, but it was originally included in the Arcanum Unbound anthology to put together. It's hardback. It's a hardback novella, and it's a little mini type deal.
Turn it edge on for us. Turn it edge on.
Oh,
I think it is.
Yeah,
that's not novella.
So as comparative to Oathbringer, which is a tome, the Edge Dancer book is slightly, as you can see,
it seems somewhat smaller.
But that was really cool. And then I got some research material for our Project Donuts, the Galactic Edge.
Oh yeah,
Galaxy's Edge series. Donut. This is Karen Travis, one of her Republic Commando books, and she's writing.
Nick was mentioning that, wasn't he?
She's writing a trilogy for them, so I got some research material to read.
Super secret stuff there we're sharing. Yeah. It's awesome.
Anyway, I think he's going to try to log back on. I'm not sure if it's going to work out, but hopefully we can.
It's really sad. I hate it when one takes a hit.
We break the internet so much. I don't understand.
Yeah, what are the odds?
What did you press, Scott? Let's be honest.
It is obviously me. I do break things. It's my.
You got some kind of Sean McGlasson orbital strike cannon type thing. Right. You've taken out Justin's.
So shout out to the Space Opera Writers Facebook group there.
Right. Absolutely. The Space Cannon has fired. Central Command has deemed you unworthy.
Yeah, McGlasson, if you're not familiar with that site, they have people every now and then will come on and just spam advertisements or whatever, and that's not what the group's for. And so then they get hit with the orbital cannon. Boom.
But they go to such steps. It's like someone's clearly an excellent graphic designer, animator kind of thing, and he's got this. He's created this thing where there's an orbital cannon that's in orbit around
It's my favorite, part on that page. Yeah. So let's do we want to talk more about Justin's stuff, or do we want to wait till he comes back, or do we want to go into some of the topics we were covering about, the collaborative writing or other things that,
well,
live
we
chat.
can really do whatever we want. It's our show, right? So I'm gonna try one more time to get him on here and send him an email. Let's see if this works.
While you're working on that, shall we cover the Reader's Choice Awards a little bit? And
absolutely,
we could do that, and we can also talk about the bidding method for because JR was asking about how the bids would be handled in the covers for A Cure.
Okay.
Either way, so the Reader's Choice is open for registration and submitting of names. If you are an author or a reader and you've read a great book, then you want to nominate it for an award, you can go to keystroke.medium.com and click on the Reader's Choice Awards button and fill out. It's a really simple Google form. I can't remember if it requires your email or not, but you go in there, you punch your title and the author in the categories that are there. I think there's 8,
and he's back.
Hey, and he's back.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. I just have bad luck with computers. They hate me.
We've been sitting here quietly mining, just waiting. We haven't been talking or joking or saying anything inappropriate until you get back.
We should do that one day. Is just have a show where everybody's just doing this, looking at the camera, like
the Zen meditation show.
Right. But anyway, if you want to
nominate
a novel for our Reader's Choice Awards, please go there.
If you wanted to nominate something by Justin Sloan, then you go to the Reader's Choice Award. Yep. Put it in.
Seamless.
And then you got it. So
good times.
And again, it's something that don't underestimate the importance. As the indie community really comes into its own, it's important that we start to take some ownership of our own destiny a little bit, and let's reflect the for want of that phrase, heroes amongst us, and look to create some people who are aspirational and reward those who are working hard.
Agreed. We're always trying to do different things here on the show, and hopefully the awards will be a big hit and we can do it again next year. If it's not, then this year will be the only year, but it'll definitely be fun.
I want to get back to Justin, but I do want to ask you about your t-shirt, Josh.
Oh, my nether, let me see. I gotta tilt the easy. So that's my Netherguard Hunter t-shirt. It is designed by Jamie Glover, and basically the newest book that I've just released with Richard Fox, Bloodlines, our character in there, Nunez, who's kind of like the Standish of our series, hijacked some time on the 3D printers of the colony to make his t-shirt and got in some trouble for it. And then it came around at the end of the show, into the book, and it was kind of cool. So I decided, hey, I'm going to make another Guard Hunter t-shirt because this is exactly what he made in the book. And it's up somewhere. I don't know that I've shared the link anywhere, but you can
sell that, because I'm going to get that tattooed too, because that's cool.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
You've not got very many spots left in your special.
I know. That one's going on the back of my head.
That's why you co-write, so that your co-writer can make a t-shirt about your books. See, if you write by yourself, like me, I would never do that. But if I have a co-writer who does it, hey,
yep,
cool. Yeah.
And see, this t-shirt inspired Richard to do his t-shirt that just says, I was redshirted in one of Richard Fox's books, and all I got with this red t-shirt.
Nice.
And then it's going to say Cod Mittens on the back.
Cod Mittens. if you're an Ember War fan, then that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense if you're not an Ember War fan.
Cod Mittens.
What is that?
Cod can't have mittens. They don't have hands.
So, Justin, back to your Biotech Wars, the 9-book series. So this is your 3 books they have out now. The trilogy is The Hobbit, and then you have the Lord of the Rings 9-book series that's coming. Any indication on when that's going to be ready, or are you putting that off till you have some other books? Are you going to do the Hammer method where you're doing 30-day releases? What's the plan with that?
I'm aiming for May. I actually put the first book up for pre-order in June. The reason being is I just wanted something to put in the back of my book 3 of this series, because it highly sets it up at the end. It's not like the series isn't over or the trilogy isn't over, but you can tell that there's going to be more. And I didn't want the readers just to be like, what? What's that? So I put it up on pre-order, which I don't usually do, and put it in June because then I'd have some time, and link to it and all that stuff. The plan is to get the first one out in May, depending on my editor and all that. That's always, asterisk based on editor. Now I have 3 editors, so if one's kind of busy, I can hopefully jump on another one, but it all depends on their schedules and how fast they can actually do it. And then I'm not going to try to rush these, because I didn't rush the writing of Biotech Wars, but I did the rapid release thing. I didn't really see much of a difference. Like I took my time on Shadow Core. It made more money than this series has. The Werewolves one, we did rapid release and they did well, but I'm starting to feel like it's not really, it doesn't matter. It's just, if the books are awesome, like you look at some of these books out there, like totally different genre, but super sales for superheroes. This is a book that's kind of a harem kind of book, but the readers, they're just like, where's book 2? Where's book 2? Where's book 2? Or now it's book 3, I guess. Where's book 3? Where's book 3? And it's months later, and he's an indie author. It's not like he's George R. R. Martin. My point being, rapid release is cool, but does it really help that much? I'd rather have high quality books.
It's not going to save your book if you just It's not the only factor.
Yeah, and nowadays with a lot of the readers I have already who are reading my books, they're so busy. They're reading so many books because so many authors are doing this rapid release thing now that it's not like they're going to have time anyway. So then if you put out book 2 too fast, it might suffer because they're not able to read it fast enough, and therefore it's not going to get the attention that it wants. Versus if you waited a little bit longer until they're excited for it, then they're going to grab it and snatch it up right away and read through it all right away. So anyway, I could be totally wrong on that, but my thought is I'd rather focus on quality and let the artist win this time around. So we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that your Starforged? Is that the one that's coming?
Yes. Yeah. So it's Ascension Gate. That series is called the Ascension Gate series, the spin-off or whatever you want to call it of the Biotech War series. And then
very mysterious blurb.
What's that?
Very mysterious blurb.
Yeah. A new series by Justin Sloan. More to come shortly. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I want to keep them guessing. I don't want anybody to know what this is. It's too exciting. But I already have 4 book covers done.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, I already have 4 book covers done. So those they're ready. I'm really excited about them. I just got the print layout for the second one, and I'm like, yes. And I'm debating about doing the next. But like I said, it's 9 books we have planned. But if books 1, 2, 3, and 4 are kind of meandering along, if they're not really selling that great or something, I might kind of revise the outline to make it a 6-book series. So.
Right.
That's a good ability, isn't it? It's like the minimum. Yeah. Is it Michael Anderle, the minimum viable product? And if it's not working, then trunk it off somehow. But in a way, that's fun.
But I mean, it's a little different than that. He advocates for big series because the whale readers, like, they don't want to get into a series until there's at least 4 books, right? Like the people who just absorb books, but they want at least 4 so they know they're getting into something legitimate that can fill you up. So I want to do at least 4, and then that's where I feel like that's a good gauge. Like if book 4 is kind of just blah, then okay, why bother to go 9 books? That's going to tie up a lot of writing time and not pay my rent anymore.
Right.
Well, worry about rent.
Yeah, I think a lot of writers, when you're getting started, have written a project that's not getting the response that you want, but you feel obligated to keep writing until you finish it, because we all like it's important to be a finisher as a writer. The first things you got to do as a writer is finish a book and then finish a couple more. But it's easy to forget how many people are interested in writing but are still struggling to cross that first hurdle. Of getting something done. So.
Yeah, and one of these things I forget who was telling me, one of these authors was saying, like, it's a good idea to have, your series. So like I have all these series and I have all these trilogies and we have the Seppucarion Universe, but I want this to be like my big series, that's like the 6 to 9 book series that could potentially have all these spin-offs. Already has a prequel spin-off. So it could be really cool if it could go all these different directions and have, like Richard Fox has done with taking side characters or just side mentions and making them into new series, and Michael Anderle has done, and all these great authors, Tim O'Brien, all these great authors have done with their spin-offs. Hopefully that'll become this, but if it doesn't, I'll just write something else.
Right, keep on going, keep on trucking.
Keep trucking. I just want to touch on you. We mentioned it briefly before, but I just want to really compliment your cover artist as well, and the character work is brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think the Starforged one is my favorite so far. That's why I'm really getting pumped about that.
I'm curious
at that now.
I'm curious about the typography because I love that. I've been trying to find someone that does that type of typography for another book series that I'm going to be working on later on this year. That's very not really Michael Bay-ish, but it's got that like epic, intense feel to it. It's the same as your other ones, the Biotech War fonts. So very, very cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Addition to the cover art.
Thanks. Yeah. 2 different artists there, by the way. For these series.
Well, I've said it before. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, as you could probably tell.
Yeah. I've always said it before that the font and the typeface on book covers is far more important, I think, than people initially realized. Because if you look at the difference between an awesome book cover a year ago and an awesome book cover today, you'll see that the font and the typeface is night and day different.
Much more under consideration.
Yeah.
But I really like that. I mean, you clearly got a damn good eye for branding your books as well. So looking back at, I think, is it your earliest stuff, the Ali Strom?
Kind of, yeah. So that and the Land of Gods one were around the same time.
Yeah. But that's really tightly branded, isn't it? I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. And you can see you kind of followed it through that sort of knowledge of branding through to Ascension Gate. Well, obviously we've only got one book there, but you can see the potential there for the branding.
Yeah, and I was looking through my art the other day, and it's pretty cool how I'm excited about it, that it all has that similar feel where there's like somebody with like an action pose and something's happening, and there's people and there's some action, some guns over here, or even going back to Land of God where there's the 2 guys, one's up with the shield and the sword, or no, there's no shield, but the sword and the spears and the things like that. Most of them. There's some that are totally not that at all, but most of them have that action-y feel going on to it, which has gotten me excited to write my own books. When I'm feeling a lack of motivation, I just look through some of those and I'm like, man,
I love
those artists are cool. Wish I could do that.
I know, I love art.
So you said you bought some for the Ascension Gate series. So you got 4 covers, was that? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I got 4 of that, and I already have ideas for the next 2, depending on. Well, it's tough too because we have it outlined, but as you know, as writers, like stories will change. So I'm also a little hesitant. I'm thinking like maybe my book 4 cover could begin to be my book 6 cover, depending on how I'm writing it, right? So if I write book 1 and it's like 90,000 words, but it's only half of the book 1 outline, well, I got to rethink how I'm going to approach this, or if it feels like a good finish point, because we know where we want book 1 to end, but we have 3 POV characters in that book. So where do the other 2 storylines go, and what point do those 2 end? And we have those stories outlined on the other 2, but we have like the 1 POV where we want that to end for sure on book 1, and the other ones we're not really certain of. So the word count could go up or down a lot depending on how we approach it and stuff. But on the topic of book covers, I actually had a different artist do the typography for the Ascension Gate versus the actual artist, because I wanted to be serious about it this time around. Like I'm always wanted to be serious, but I never really approached it that way in the past. And this time I was like, well, I know I have an awesome artist here, but he's not really great at typography. He just kind of does like the basic ones, like he's fine, but there's nothing fancy about it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that before, is that the typography, that being a brilliant artist does not necessarily make you a brilliant book cover artist or the typography person. Sometimes those are unique skill sets. Kind of like in the comic book world, you have somebody who sketches, you have somebody who inks, you have somebody who colors, and those are all separate disciplines in making a comic book.
Well, we are running up to the end of the hour, and probably we could go on for another hour if we wanted to. However, we can't because we have other things we have to do today. Unfortunately,
are only so big.
Yes, that's true too. So with this series that you have coming out, it's coming out this summer. Where can people find out about you and get more information on these books coming out from you?
Yes, I have a website. Oh, yes, I have a website. It's just justinslonauthor.com. I have a Facebook page, which I think is the same thing. And then I recently started a group, which is called the Sloan Zone. So if you want to join,
I'm going to join that in the next 10 seconds.
Just
because it's
that just needs to be a member of that, just because how cool it is.
Yeah. Like,
the
I was jealous.
Sloan Zone.
Sloan Show. Yeah, I was jealous of Jonathan's werewolves. You know, that's not. So I was thinking about trying to find an animal or something like that, or I have my shadow core. So I did a poll for my readers, and some of them wanted it to be like the shadows or something like that. But it's just the Sloan Zone. It rhymes.
Nice. I like it. I approve. I approve.
I approve the message.
For everybody that hung out with us in the live chat, thanks for hanging out with us. Always a good time to see you guys here and chatting with you guys and causing mayhem and ruckus and shenanigans in the live chat. If you're listening on the feed after the fact, come and hang out with us on Monday mornings. The live chat is definitely something to enjoy and at least experience once in your life. If you have never experienced live chat on Keystroke Medium, you need to, because your life will be changed forever.
And it is recorded forever now as well.
That's true. It is recorded. And saved for posterity, and I don't know how good that is. It might be a bad thing.
Lots of fun.
So, all right. Well, thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. Everybody that listened, we appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe, share the show around, let people know that we're the greatest writing community ever. Find us on Facebook, Keystroke Medium, and our website, keystroke.medium.com. Come back and join us next week. We're going to talk about some writing. We're going to talk about some reading, and of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. You guys have a fantastic Monday.
And don't forget to nominate Justin Sloan for the Reader's Choice Award with Keystroke Medium.
Oh, yeah, do that
If
too.
you've read his books and you like them, which you probably do, because that's obvious.
See you later, guys.